Hi everyone, I think we've got all your attention now. It's a little bit cheesy, but Raul and I really wanted to go for it because we thought we'll make this use case as tangible as possible. So the next 30 minutes, we're gonna show, or you're gonna learn how much an artist actually has to wait, or how much time passes until you hear a stream, until the moment that artist actually gets paid. And a quick hint is actually a lot more than you would imagine. We're going to showcase Tinlake. Lucas has been giving an overview in the talk earlier. And Tinlake is one of the first applications built on Centrifuge, basically allowing companies to borrow against their assets in DeFi. And I'm quite happy that we're joined by Raul from Paperchain today. So we will actually extend a loan to one of their record labels live today on Ethereum mainnet. And yeah, what could go wrong? Nothing, right? So we have 30 minutes and we have a lot of ground to cover, so I jump right in. At Centrifuge, we have been working on bettering the financial supply chain to foster economic opportunity everywhere for any type of business, regardless of size and circumstance. And the issue at hand is when a business delivers a product or a service, they actually don't get paid right away. The global average that they have to wait from until they get paid is 60 days, more or less. But depending on the size of your company or where you're located, this can easily go up to 3 to 4 to 5 months. And if you look at the global spend, the global B2B spend, this actually results in $30 trillion locked in at any given point in time. So $30 trillion that's not accessible for businesses. And businesses usually don't have that time to wait that long. So they have to pay their staff, they have expenses themselves, pay IRS, etc. So what they do is usually they bridge that gap, they take out a loan, or they do invoice financing. But the issue with that is it can actually get quite expensive. It's quite restrictive, actually, and in the first place, it's not accessible to anyone. Yeah. And at Centrifuge, we have been working on tackling these issues. So what we've built is we allow businesses to tokenize their financial documents in-house, invoices, warehouse receipts, royalties, for example, and then use that this on-chain representation of their non-fungible real-world asset on-chain to use that as collateral in DeFi. But I assume every one of you is aware that the current DeFi ecosystem doesn't really speak NFT. So we have the lending protocols where you can use your fungible assets, where you can use your other cryptocurrencies and lock them up and take out a loan in exchange. But if you look at the non-fungible assets, there's actually not so much happening at the moment. So at Centrifuge, we enable businesses now to use their non-fungible assets on-chain, but then there's DeFi, so there is still a piece of the puzzle missing. So for us, it was a natural extension to put our heads down and build Tinlake. And with Tinlake, you can, as a business or as a borrower, you can bundle your non-fungible assets and bundle this as collateral. In exchange, ERC20 tokens get minted. And these ERC20 tokens, we call them collateral value tokens, can then be used to tap into the liquidity that is provided by DeFi. This is actually the way this is set up, this is actually tackling the issues that I was pointing out earlier. So it is accessible by anyone, and it now becomes feasible for borrowers to actually also use smaller types of assets. So it becomes economically feasible to maybe use a $100 invoice to actually get financing or borrow against that. And one important issue that we tackle with this year is that it's a lot faster. And how fast this is, we're gonna hopefully showcase now. And so this is where I hand over to Raul. Yeah, okay, perfect.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Rahul. I'm the CTO and founder of a company called Paperchain. So before I dive into the use case and the live demo of the transaction, I want to just give you guys a little bit insight into what really happens when you listen to songs on say, Spotify. I mean, this is how my day starts when I'm in my when I'm going in U-Bahn in Berlin or underground or NYC subway. You know, we play music. But when I come home, I just say, Alexa, play "Baby Boy" by Beyonce. Right? So what just happened there, right? We're just telling devices to play something for us. You know, my girlfriend, I'm a very lenient listener, where my girlfriend would be like, just play me some jazz or happy music. But what I'm trying to stress on here is that the experience of music consumption is really at its epitome. We are at the highest level where the interaction between devices and humans are super seamless, and we are consuming this in a real-time basis, generating a tremendous amounts of data. But what most people don't realize is that when we stream that transaction, it triggers off a financial transaction that gets split into 30 different ways, perhaps. For example, music especially is driven by copyright law. So everyone has a little slice of that pie. Song copyrights versus master copyrights. So you have publishers, music publishers, record labels, artist managers, producers, and at the very end, you see Beyonce and Sean Paul. So what this means is that as money is flowing through different layers of music supply chain, it gets delayed because it has to go through several layers of accounting cycles, your points basis, and how much splits are. And by the time it comes to Beyonce or Sean Paul, it takes a lot of time. So how long does it take, right? It can take up to 3 to 9 months until creators to get paid from a so-called stream. So that song you just heard, I just press play and pause and play. Fraction of that, you have to wait 9 months from now to get that money. Now, Beyonce may not have cash flow problems, right? But most of the indie music industry, independent labels, independent musicians, they have a lot of accessibility problems in how they can actually access their future revenues. So this is not just a music industry problem. This is actually a digital media problem. And we see several verticals here. It's the same supply chain financing, or supply chain finance, where royalties or your future cash flows are locked up in this convoluted process, where even though you have this instantaneous digital proof that that event has occurred, you have that proof, you have that validation, you have to wait this much in each of these verticals. And we call these proofs of consumption in our system. So what do record labels typically do, right? They have this need, think in their shoes for a second. You saw an artist, you discovered an artist, and you want to sign that artist. He's blowing up, they're on YouTube, on TikTok, they're blowing up. The first thing you want to do is sign that artist, give them an advance, book that tour, book the O2 Stadium. You want cash advances. The entire entertainment industry works in cash advances. You want to produce a Netflix film, you need a cash advance. You need to hire a producer, you need a cash advance. The entire creative industry's arts and entertainment works on this principle. So when record labels, especially their business dealing with multiple artists, signing a lot of artists, their cash flows are always stuck in the future. And they access traditional means here, and it's either high cost of capital, or they have the turnaround time to access that liquidity is pretty slow. But the third most interesting point, what Leah has actually touched upon, is accessibility. Like if you see Sony Music or Universal Records, they don't have problems of cash flow. They can get their money to their artists fairly quickly. But what about someone like Lil Nas X or Chance the Rapper, or these upcoming budding musicians in hip hop, or like these more marginalized communities, or like this indie labels where creative industries are really thriving. So this is where Paperchain is at the moment. So this is our current product, where what we do is we take this analytical proofs of consumption, we price them in real time. And our customers right now, they log on, they can see real-time revenue analytics instead of waiting for 90 days, 120 days. They can actually see in real time how your assets or catalogs or releases are performing. And the interesting thing I want to point out is how receivables are broken down into 0 to 30, 30 to 60, and 90-day receivables. So your cash flows are broken down, and these are priced in real time. And this is where I'd like to kind of like zoom in a bit. So this is the high-level process, right? So we have data coming in from Netflix or Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. This is tamper-proof data. I call this tamper-proof because there's no intermediary intercepting the data, the pipelines from Spotify, Apple Music to Paperchain. So we built deals and partnerships in place so we can get these data directly. And for our clients, we create a highly personalized portfolio on how they've been paid out historically, and we create a learning machine model right there. And then we price these trends in real time. So companies like record labels or distributors, they can actually see how their catalog is performing. And once they actually see how much revenue they're performing, we can package them as a synthetic receivable represented by a non-fungible token and source liquidity. And we've been working with MakerDAO and Tinlake Centrifuge team to kind of source that liquidity and put that framework in place. So when we do this, we are actually working, accessing the liquidity pool, but we're also providing a risk model, a very comprehensive risk model associated with this asset and a price feed onto the on-chain asset. So for me, risk is a spectrum depending on various signals that are going on here. It falls on that risk model, and we actually provide how much loan we can actually issue. So we provide the data, we provide the risk model, we provide the price feed, and we draw DAI from it, or we print DAI from this asset. So zooming in a little bit further, this is what's happening. So this is except for the customer name, everything else is actual data. What you're seeing is, let me translate this. So this record label, for just their Spotify revenues, for the month of August, they had 23.2 million streams. So for me, this is 23.2 million proofs of data that there's a forthcoming payment that's happening. And we created a historicals versus actuals prediction model. We saw a variance of 1.18%, and a blended per play rate or per stream rate is about 0.0036. It's even lower when it's in other DSP, in other service providers. But the important thing is the payment for that receivables are going to happen on October 31st. This money is actually a composite for, or it's representing the revenues for 2,400 labels and over about 180 labels and 2,400 artists right there. And this model obviously is owned by Paperchain. So what we take this, we package this into a synthetic receivable. So this is where we kind of make it a little more finance driven. So, and based on the model that we have, we projected, there's a risk model projected against it. And we have a term of 51 days, and we assess the interest rate based on the risk model at 7%. Paperchain takes an origination fee of 0.5%. And the loan amount that we're going to print DAI from is $60,035. And you can see here, the underwriter here is the Paperchain, is our own entity. And then when we pass this asset onto Tinlake, we actually make a connection. We provide that price feed, and we provide a token ID to mint the NFT. And this is where we want to actually show this transaction. Now that translate all this into an actual transaction to draw and print DAI from it at the moment.
Yeah. And maybe, here, do you want?
Yeah.
And to keep risk a little bit lower for the live demo, we minted the NFTs of the underlying data that Raul has just explained in advance. So we're going to take the token ID of this NFT now and go to the Tinlake interface. And here you see the dashboard, and now actually you can, let's go to the dashboard. You see that there's nothing there yet because we will be taking out the first loan right now. And so here you see the two tabs. So you have on the one side, you have the borrower and the admin. And to be able, that the borrower is actually able to take out that loan, it has this NFT, the asset has to be whitelisted first. So, and we're going to show you how this works. Yeah. Here, so whitelist. I'm going to take the token ID that that's attached to the underlying document. This automatically fetches the metadata. So you have seen that there were actually more data fields attached to this document, but they're stored off-chain, and we can actually, by use case, we can specify what is the data that you can actually then publicly view. So me as the admin, I've seen the data that's attached to it. I specify the appraisal, so the value of the underlying asset. I will specify what the borrower can actually, what amount the borrower can take out. So we all talked about this in advance. I'm not just making up any numbers. Yep. So, and now I whitelist. I have to confirm. You also have to confirm.
Yep.
Okay. This happens. The suspense of Ethereum mainnet. Here's another one. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, confirm that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah? There should be another one.
So that transaction is obviously being mined for right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, depending on traffic, this can take a while.
So also when United States is just waking up.
Hmm?
So can I ask a question while we're
Yes,
waiting?
please,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Is this from the admin's perspective right now?
Yeah, this is from the admin's
Okay,
perspective.
so you would have submitted a NFT already.
Yeah, as a borrower, we
Yeah.
submitted a request for the loan, basically.
But the admin at Tinlake is whitelisting it. That's what we're having.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're just waiting right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Eventually this will show up here and then you can borrow.
Yeah, we're going to show this once it's whitelisted. We're going to show how it will actually look like from the borrower point of view. Because, okay, so now it is being whitelisted, and then once it whitelisted it, the borrower doesn't automatically take out a loan. It sort of sits in his or her pool, and then they can decide whenever they want to take out the loan.
So in this scenario, who's taking the risk? Tinlake is taking the risk that if the chain doesn't pay back, or who's taking the risk?
See, as an admin, as you see, the role of Leah was basically to, given the parameters, given the assessment and the metadata of the asset, she had the opportunity to give the appraisal amount and the interest rate that was set, right? So this is decoupled from paper chain. So at this moment, we're gonna productize these as things progress, obviously, but that appraisal, we have indicators from our model, from predictive model. This is the level it falls within the risk spectrum, and this is what we want. In Leah's case, she trusted us, obviously, and she gave us thumbs up here for the same numbers.
So you're going to take that money and give it to the artist or the label, whichever the case was, yeah? Correct?
Yeah, there's one more step that's going to happen after this. So the whitelisting allows, it just prepares the NFT.
Yeah, I understand that.
Right, and it'll still be up to, so because the terms were set now by the admin, the borrower, so the record label has an opportunity to look at the asset and actually go through all the terms and make the final decision. Yes, I want to borrow against those terms.
Right. So if the record label doesn't pay back that loan,
Right.
in this particular scenario, who gets screwed?
So this is how because we're all preparing basically for how this fits into the multi-collateral DAI system. So the way we structured legal, I don't know if you had the opportunity to actually. If you've seen the Tinlake presentation earlier, how the structure of a special purpose vehicle, where we are giving the right to the forthcoming entity in that forthcoming receivables in that entity. So the liquidation, all of that happens right, and all the ownership goes to the SPV. And so the maker holders actually, in the event of liquidation, they have hold of that receivables.
Yeah, okay. Somebody has to administer this SPV, but my question really was then, who is administering the SPV in your particular case? Is it PaperChain or is it Tinlake?
Right. So this SPV right now, the way we've structured it, this will be a SPV between PaperChain, MakerDAO, and Tinlake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're taking the risk. That the artist doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, we are the underwriter in this case.
Right.
Yeah. This is the point of where we can actually decentralize the responsibility of underwriting this and the appraisal amounts, given the industry expertise and like.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I mean, I think the big question here is technically how do you price the NFT, right?
Yeah.
And the mechanism is obviously over collateralization.
Absolutely.
Here, so
Yeah.
you don't end up. Is there some kind of like? I mean,
Just do it again.
the value
Submit it again.
is
The
derived
data
from the
Yes, geht.
the stream music. Let's
Mhm.
use
Und dann
let's
einfach
just
nur
use
Time
the
Gas.
streaming example.
Aber das
So the
specifies
value is
dann.
fixed,
Yes,
right?
it's
You
dark.
can't, you don't, unlike some of the crypto assets, you don't have a fluctuation because the transaction already happened. There's a price for that, so you don't run the risk of like having a margin call or anything.
The value is not actually fixed because the way accounting models in these SaaS companies work is that it depends on how many subscribers you have.
Yeah.
They create a royalty pool, they create a market share, and they pay out. So you don't know how many subscribers Spotify had from India versus Japan versus, say, Oslo or Norway until that accounting cycle ends, because they might have had new subscribers. So what we do is when we onboard the client, we take a lot of accounting history, a lot of statements, a lot of data. We have thousands of files of their financial picture, and we created a personalized portfolio around them. So it was our expertise that created a personalized risk portfolio of how much they've been getting paid, and we are doing predictive analytics based on those 22 million streams. And we predicted it's $83,000 forthcoming revenues, and the standard deviation between their historical payments, it's like 1.3%. So that's accounts within the variance range. So that is how we are going with a more statistical approach of how much this asset is valued. And then, given the indicators, we lowered the LTV ratio to 73%.
So basically, the tricky part is pricing the very first NFT of a given label or artist, for that matter, with no previous NFTs issued.
Yeah, we definitely, because we are a B2B company, so record labels who are basically trying to come into this or access this sort of liquidity, they need to have a financial history, at least. So we take 2 years worth of financial history before we can create a more confident model around it.
Great.
So really the risk doesn't lie into non-payment. The risk lies into your prediction of how many subscribers and so on, whether they meet that or not.
True. There is a level of risk there. Risk of non-payment is definitely there in this kind of model,
Right,
but
it's really low.
really the payment is coming from the likes of Spotify and Apple Music, the Inc. 500 companies. We're comparing against another asset called ETH, which is really more predictable. Yeah.
I don't know if this is significant, but I've heard that there's some artists who create very short songs on Spotify and then play them and then get lots of revenue, and it's basically just fraud.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that impacts your business.
Yeah, we actually do a lot of data science around this. This is where our expertise on music industry and how SaaS models around media industries actually work. So most service providers like Spotify, they have a threshold of 30 seconds. So that data is actually given to us in a single unit. So we can actually see if this qualifies as a royalty-bearing stream.
So Spotify does the black and white.
So they have, they have a pipeline called an anti-abuse channel, most of these providers, so they take a pass. So there's a delay of 24 hours where we can access, which is, and then we further access this and clean that up,
So in these cases, you're way over collateralizing the asset. But it seems like you could take that and basically make underwriters a validator and bring in third-party underwriters to kind of bring down the level of risk.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, if this entire process was machine to machine, for example, that is a lower risk score in terms of in the spectrum, because we had so many human interventions here, we couldn't justify more than 73%. But for the purpose of a pilot, we had to uncover a lot of these unknowns along the way. So that's the reason for over collateralization at the moment. But typically, we are anticipating anywhere between 80 and 90% as a collateralization rate.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk more about the risk model?
Sure. I could talk a little bit about it. So the question was, she was asking how do we do the risk model. So we identified several points or several signals how the data flows, because what we're doing is pricing data. So understanding where the data flows, if it's coming directly from Spotify, and that is a lower risk score. But if the record label, which typically they do, use a third-party distributor, if the data is coming from them, they take a 1.5% or 5% basis points on, percentage points on the revenue. So that is, but they also have a point of delay of 15 to 30 days. 3 to 5 days. So depending on your deal structure, your gap between 30 to 90 days completely changes. So if it's direct, you have a direct distribution deal with Apple Music or Spotify, your revenues are turned around somewhere between 40 and 60 days. But if you use a distributor where you have a global audience and you need marketing in Australia versus Japan, it's very typical you'll have a deal structure like that, and the revenues are beyond 90 days. So these all are some of these signals that we actually account for. And we also look at as I said, when we onboard a client, we are actually accessing their financial history, their payables, their receivables, their debt positions, their credit history, and whatever we can get our signals on. So the more data they provide, it really de-risks their position of collateralizing and accessing this asset. So we want to build that confidence that they can actually repay. For example, music companies, they have revenues from various different sources, not just Spotify. And if we are just collateralizing Spotify revenues, that's obviously a much low risk position.
Okay, so we have, we checked again, we put the gas price apparently too low at the beginning, so we had to reject the previous one, which had a caught up then on the second one. So what we're going to do, we'll revert back to our backup, which is not just the real deal, but it's still just showcase. I mean, we're also here to showcase you how exactly it would work and what it would look like. So I'm just going to click through it. And I mean, we're going to do the transaction later on anyway. So if anybody is interested in doing it with us later, then feel free, but time, looking at the time. So I said here earlier, I will whitelist, here, okay, I have to actually click here. So I have so we minted an NFT on Kovan with the same data points. Here it fetched the underlying info. I need to specify the appraisal and the principal amount, whitelisted. Here have whitelist. Okay, so, and this is what it looks like when it's successful. Yeah, exactly. So I'm still in the admin field, but if I go back now, here, it is also then listed here on my dashboard. Like here, obviously, we had some test runs before where we minted several NFTs before. So here's actually quite loan portfolio that's outstanding here, the outstanding debt. And here you can see the number of loans. So now that was the admin part. Me as an admin, I've set the parameters for the borrower to actually take out a loan, and here this would be then Raul's view as a borrower.
Yeah, so for me as a, well, on behalf of the borrower right now, is the view is I know now my request in the form of an NFT was whitelisted, and the parameters and the appraisal amounts were attributed right now. So here, I click on view. And as a borrower, I get the opportunity to look at the terms that were presented, and I can make the decision to borrow this 60,035 DAI. MetaMask, confirmation, all good, and 60,000 DAI transferred. So you as a borrower, you have the opportunity to draw this DAI into your account. Basically, you're making this request, and now a Tinlake system has the compounding interest rate real time. You can actually see how your debt position is and how much you have to repay, and you can make repayments, multiple repayments, or a single repayment. So it's just a regular 60-day, 90-day loan from here on.
Was that done on Maker? Was that its multi-collateral DAI?
Yes, yes.
I mean,
This is, yeah.
I mean, MCD is not live yet, so we basically mocked that scenario where the Tinlake was funded prior to be able to take out a loan. So, I mean, that was unfortunate that it actually didn't work to showcase this live here right now. We have done several pilots before, so there's always this little risk that you have. Just where we are at Tinlake and what's next. So we're actually live on mainnet since July. We have financed in total roughly 250,000 worth of DAI. Like, we extended several loans. We've worked with our first pilots were with real estate companies. So we tokenized mortgages and fix and flip loans. We finance invoices and theoretically now synthetic receivables as well.
Yeah, so Paperchain, we are live, and we are onboarding clients as we speak. We have record labels on board, and we're getting a lot of interest from music distributors. And before we move on to different verticals in digital media, music is really our beachhead market. And what we are exploring further down the line is more DeFi-enabled products, like think salaries for artists, which is a completely different financial product you want to set up. So we are highly engaged with teams like Centrifuge to kind of figure out the points of decentralization. Again, for me, I always believed decentralization is not a binary state. You're not decentralized, or the question is not that if you're decentralized, but how decentralized are you? And we've identified a lot of those points in underwriting, especially how we can de-risk and decentralize those responsibilities. But multi-collateral DAI is something we're looking forward to, and towards putting together a governance proposal for the MKR holders and the Maker community.
So what does the user experience or interface look like for the borrower? I mean, the artist doesn't care that he's got 60,000 DAI, right? He's interested in actually using that, whether it's via paying. And then presumably there need to be some tools that ensure repayment of that on a pretty some sort of schedule. Yeah,
so simply put, we took care of that. Is the user experience is pretty seamless, that they do not care or know about crypto. This is a financial instrument that Paperchain uses to drive down the cost of capital and to enable products like these, and which puts us in a very competitive position. So they do not know, they when they request, when all the approvals satisfy and go through, they really get USD or GBP in their accounts. The repayment, we work with the integration providers like Spotify, Apple Music. We create lockbox accounts, and we're already doing those stuff. Yep.
The artist has several options on financing, right? They could, in this case, they're borrowing DAI. They could sell their receivables to a third party if they wanted to at a discount. Or I'm kind of curious, does Apple or Spotify offer dynamic discounting, where they just get finance from the company?
Not Apple. Spotify has tried direct distribution, and they have actually closed it because it just doesn't fit with their model really. But also, historically it's been the power or the responsibility of record labels because they are the ones incurring the expenses. If you are doing a release, they are the ones taking the risk of putting down a promotion plan or your tour plan, hiring everyone involved. Same thing with movie industry as well. So they are the ones that have the most insight of how much money is necessary and how they can actually recoup those balances. So we work on behalf, we really work with the music industry itself and then integrate with the tech companies like Spotify.
Okay, I think we got a lot of questions in between, so thanks you for covering this.
Yeah. Well, thanks all. Appreciate it.